Welcome to the Information Security Stack. My name is Daniel Gustafsson, and with me is Kim Hindart.
Hoba.
Today, Kim, we are going to launch our first session and first episode of this podcast in English, and we're going to discuss a topic that we usually do in our other podcast series, which we call What Is? And then we take a specific topic and we try to explain in as close to detail as we can, but still in an understandable manner. So today we are going to talk about what is information security. What actually is information security? I mean, it might sound like an obvious question, but if you bear with us for a couple of minutes here, we might convince you that there's more to it than just a punchline or a cool buzzword. So, where do we start? How do you
Yeah,
introduce information security?
yeah. There's, uh, like I said, there's a heck of a lot of different definitions, and I bet you different ideas out there. If I just ask anyone off the street what is information security, you would get pretty much different opinions, I think, and it would be hard for people to have that tangible in some sense. But I think the important part is information security is something that's been around since the Romans. You know, ciphers and seals on the envelopes and stuff.
Yep.
Uh, this is not something really, really new as a concept. You don't want unauthorized people to gain information that they shouldn't have. That's pretty much. So you have three basic concepts. Of course, today with the digital age and everything running digital, information security is mainly focused on digital. But let's not forget that it has a broader perspective, and you can actually study this historically as well on different things. So the methods we use, even digitally, are of course a whole lot more advanced and goes a lot faster, but the basic principles are still the same as ciphering that you used in ancient Rome.
Mhm.
So, yeah, three concepts I would like to say, three basic principles in information security. It's called the Cia Triad. And uh, it boils down, it's easy enough. So, I like it. It's simplified, but it's still very easy. And I'm still amazed how many doesn't even do the fundamentals, so to speak.
Mhm.
CIA stands for confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And here we have a very, very hot topic right now called privacy as well. So I would say privacy is a subsection of confidentiality. But let's start with confidentiality.
Yep.
That means that you should keep the information from being disclosed
Mhm.
or available, readable for someone that's not authorized to have that information.
Yep.
So it can be as simple as locking an envelope in a safe and making sure that only the people with the safe password to the safe are the ones that are also allowed to see and read that information.
Yep.
In a digital world, it's easy enough. You password protect stuff today
Mhm.
a lot. So make sure that you don't read it. As a provider of systems, it's more a matter of we don't let anyone off the street go into the data center, remove a disk,
Mhm.
and take it with them and read what's on the disk. So confidentiality is basically unauthorized people, external things that are not supposed to be there. When you do hacking,
Mhm.
you're actually uh, usually penetrating a type of system to gain unauthorized access. So this is a confidentiality breach. How does this differ from privacy? I usually compare this to uh, when you go away, you might give a key to your neighbor for your neighbor to water your plants
Yep.
if you're away from vacation. Now, all of a sudden, your neighbor have authorized access to your apartment. So your neighbor entering your apartment is not a confidentiality breach the same as a burglar entering your apartment.
Nope.
Breaking and entering is a crime. Giving your key to a neighbor, well, you have given them permission to be in your apartment. That doesn't mean that they might not violate your privacy, because if you found out later on that your neighbor had snooped through your medical cabinet, your medicine
Mm-hmm.
cabinet, you snooped through your bills you had left, snooped through your underwear drawer,
Mm-hmm.
you would feel a bit violated. And that's privacy.
Yep.
So, privacy is a component you handle when it comes to two parts. One, you you need to protect privacy data from unauthorized access, of course,
Mm-hmm.
but you also need to protect the wrong use of the privacy data from people with access. So this is a subpart. But confidentiality in main is only the people that should be able to see this data are allowed to see it. And
Yeah.
yeah,
But I actually like that comparison a lot, and we have been discussing this in other topics before. But I think the misconception is that privacy, I should say, confidentiality and privacy is the same thing, but it really isn't. What you deem confidential is up to you. If you then deem you want to share that confidential information with someone else, it's also your decision. I mean, I know sometimes you use the example of having the perfect secret language. If I don't let anyone know anyone else in on my secret, no one else would understand my language, and that's great. But that's only me understanding the language, so it's super confidential to me. I need to let people in to understand my language in order to make it useful. So confidentiality is really your classification of whether or not something is actually confidential, or whether or not you should keep it away from other people to gain that knowledge, so to speak. Now, the privacy part, which is a huge thing going on right now in the world with the actual privacy shield that fell in the US for not long ago, that is just a matter of who can access what and who can see what, and there's a clear difference. Even though data might be deemed confidential, the privacy part becomes if I actually have access to a system or a data or a server or a data disk, whatever it might be. If I have the access and I use that access to look at confidential things which I do not have the authorizations to do, then that's a privacy breach. And here is the difference, a clear difference. So don't get it confused. But it is valid to take both parts into consideration when we talk about it, because the confidentiality bit is just a stamp. This is confidential, yes or no. How many people should get access to it? Five. Okay, that's the only five people who should get access to understand what the data is or whatever you have deemed confidential. If I give that access to someone else and they in return start to look at the data anyways, that's a privacy breach, and there's a clear difference between the
yeah.
two.
Let, let's say you have hospital records and a nurse looks up your hospital records.
Yes.
Uh, if she looks if she looks at your hospital records because you're in an emergency room, that's a legit reason why she looks at her hospital records.
Mm,
And of course, she should have access to your hospital records. And it's important that she can look at your hospital records to give you the correct treatment.
mhm,
So that's nothing strange with that. Imagine that the same nurse knows that you are dating her daughter and she wants to look up your hospital records to see if you have any STDs or any chronic diseases
mhm.
or any history of alcoholism. That's a privacy breach,
Yes.
because then she doesn't have a legit reason to look at it. She still have access,
Mhm.
full access to her hospital records by being a nurse, of course. But then, so this is the difference between confidentiality and privacy in a big sense.
Yes.
Mm. Let's talk about integrity, data
Yes.
integrity.
The I of
And
CIA, integrity.
And this is important part. It's not integrity in the sense that we are talking about people and integrity. This is data integrity,
Yes.
just to be clear. So we
and then there's a South Park episode regarding integrity, and that's a completely different thing. So don't
yes.
let's not
So,
get things
so,
confused.
so let's not mix them up. Uh, Data integrity is that you should rely that the data you have has not been modified or destroyed in a manner during, for instance, transfers. This is especially important during transfers, but in many other operations as well. Let's take a good example, your hospital record. You really don't want anyone adding or removing things in your hospital record files. For instance, if you are allergic to peanuts
Hmm.
or allergic to penicillin,
Hmm.
you might want to have that left in your records. And if someone happens to just remove that, it might have bad consequences for you. The same with your bank account. You don't want to see a lot of strange transactions happening on your bank account that you have no idea why they're happening and how they're happening. It depends, of course, if you make a net gain or net loss on that bank account anyway. But
Of course. But
I don't know about you. I prefer my bank account to be a very solid, reliable thing
yeah,
that doesn't show a lot of happenings that I'm not aware they should be there.
no.
And yeah, so you want to have that pretty clear. And the same way, you want to have the history of your bank transactions very, very well safe stored.
Hmm.
I bet you no one would be really happy if they come and say, "Oh, we can only show you your bank transactions for the last month. The
Mm.
rest is gone."
Yeah. No, that's the problem. So
You would say,
we want the data to stay intact. We want it to be untampered. Is the actual word we use in the industry.
"Yes."
The data should not be tampered with. That's the definition of the integrity part.
So this is the same as when you started to seal envelopes with wax in the ancient times.
Yep.
You just wanted to make sure that when someone got the envelope, you could see from immediately that it hadn't been tampered with. Someone hadn't broken the seal
Hmm.
and looked at it.
Yep.
So yeah, this is pretty much uh, integrity and the same. How do I know if you want to send me a message? How do I know it comes from you and it
Hmm.
comes unaltered from you?
Yep.
And this is, of course, based on different transactions. And this is important a lot with the communication that we're doing today,
Hmm.
a whole lot. But anyway, data integrity is an important part. And especially since data is processed a lot digitally today, crazy lot,
Mm.
it should not be altered along the way. So
No.
if I send an electronic message to you, the different servers and stuff that it jumps through shouldn't alter the data. That's an important part as
Mm.
well, because yeah, in the best of cases, it just gives you some untangible, unreadable thing, and you say, "What is this?" And then you ask me to resend it, and it's been destroyed on the way.
Yep.
That's still an integrity breach. In the worst of cases, someone has gone in and manipulated the data to say something completely different than what I was saying,
Yep.
and that's
That's what we
also
want to.
something still.
That's what we want to stay away from. So confidentiality, how you actually classify your data. Integrity, the data should remain untampered with. It should remain the way it was left yesterday, and no one has done anything with it. That's the important part. And the last bit of the CIA is the availability.
Yes, and here there's a lot of different meanings as well. But for information to be useful, you need it to be available when you need it, so to speak.
Hmm.
So that's something. Denial of service attacks is very common today, extremely common.
Yes.
So uh, that's a type of a breach. That's not hacking by itself.
Nope.
It's a cybercrime, but it's still not actually. You're not penetrating and gaining access where you shouldn't have access, so
Nope.
to speak. You're just doing a denial of service. So what does it mean with this availability? Yeah, think of a grocery store, and you have a epidemic. For us not to be demonetized right now, we will compare this to a famous beer. So I'm talking about beer, and let's call this epidemic a random beer name. Let's call it Corona.
Yes, exactly.
Mm, mm. So for us not to be demonetized, let's call this a beer.
Hmm.
And this beer causes people to say, oh, we better bunker up with toilet paper
Yes, tons of it.
for some really, really strange reason.
Yes.
All of a sudden, there's no toilet paper available anywhere in the grocery stores.
Hmm.
This is a typical availability failure.
Yes.
It's the same with information. You might need to have specific information readily available, but it's not there. It might be that the system is down, of course, or it might be that there's a long queue or heavy load or something else that blocks your possibility to gain access to this information when you need it.
Hmm.
And yeah, and people tend to say availability. Yeah, availability can be a real life and death matter as well. You should not forget air traffic control. If they lose availability to their systems,
Yes,
that can end up with horrendous consequences.
for sure.
911
Hmm.
or your emergency number in the country you are in.
Yes.
When you dial that number, you really want someone to pick up. On the other hand, you don't want to be service is unavailable at the moment. Please try again.
Exactly. Life is on the line here.
Yeah. So these are things when you build something, for instance, high available, as well as it's a popular thing to do denial of service attacks, because denial of service attacks does not mean that you need to penetrate through firewalling and protection like that.
Nope.
Yeah. It just means that you can block someone from entering. So that's
So that, I mean,
yeah, just a
that's
comment.
also actually the easiest way to destroy someone's IT infrastructure today. Is, I mean, the hard bit is actually to hack an infrastructure or a firewall. That takes skill. To
Yes,
just close down a website or a data provider with tons of data shooting through with a DDoS attack, that's actually quite simple, quite cheap, and really doesn't take any
yes,
skills at all. So the availability part is really the one that will get the biggest, I believe, the biggest headlines when things aren't available. But
yes,
it's also the easiest way to destroy someone's infrastructure. So we could just continue discussion on the side note. I just want to wrap these things up, the CIA up here, so we understand what we're talking about. The C was the confidentiality, meaning how you actually deem things confidential, whether or not it is um, confidential or not. That's your decision. The integrity part, meaning the data should not be tampered with, and the availability is that the data is always available. These are the three fundamental pillars of information security. And the reason why we bring this up is that we will refer to this CIA model as we go along in these episodes, and we are going to talk when we will talk about other subjects. We might refer to the CIA model or these three pillars of this model. So now you understand what it is. The interesting bit, though, Kim, is that if we're just going to elaborate about a little bit about this, is that can you have all of these three things at the same time? Can you have a high confidentiality, high integrity, and a high availability at the same time?
yes. Actually, that's the nice part. Yes, you can.
Because some will say that you will need to give up one of the three. Let's say you have a highly confidential system, meaning you have data which is really secure, meaning you probably have high integrity. Then the availability might be suffering because you won't be able to get grant access to the systems from wherever you might be. could be that way.
Absolutely, it could be that way. The the thing is, of course, like you said, the most confidential thing, easiest not to breach, is of course if I handwrite a hard copy of information on a piece of paper
Yep.
and lock that in a safe.
Yep.
Yeah, but that's hardly very available.
Nope.
But if we talk about modern systems, if we talk about electronic digital systems today that are actually meant to do some sort of digital information exchange, yes, you can build all three of them fundamentally in a very solid thing today. That's uh, that's generally true. You can build systems that are very resilient from all three parts of this, but it costs a lot more than
Mm-hmm.
building weak systems.
Mm-hmm.
So that's important to know also. It doesn't mean it costs more uh, necessarily in price. We have a lot of excellent open source software today
Mm.
that doesn't cost a lot in license, but it costs in effort.
Yes.
And that's not something we will take away. And this is also why we come into the area. Can you make an effort? That comes with the business culture later on.
Yep.
And do we need to make an effort for this? Yes, uh, you can, but you need to pay for it
Mm-hmm. Both
with an effort. So
yeah,
that's
absolutely, both with some money resources, but primarily with your time and your willingness to actually implement these types of methods into your organization. And as a little bit of a teaser here, we will cover that aspect of the information security chain, meaning what does it actually mean for the people working with the systems and the platforms, because purchasing great technology systems and saying now I'm secure is not enough. Unfortunately, way too many companies do exactly that. They invest millions of dollars and euros into hardware and software and products, and they just claim, what if now we have the greatest security system in place, we are now by definition secure. And in the next episode, we will cover how that ad is not the full complete truth. You actually need to get your people on board as well. So we will cover that in our next episode
and
of this stuff.
and when we're talking about compliance and regulatory compliance, especially when we're moving into the bank and finance sectors and this stuff,
Hmm.
uh, there is another gathering principle called non-repudiation.
Yep.
This is a tricky thing, but it's mostly no takebacks. So it's more this: I promise to make America great again.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's easy to make that promise if no one holds you accountable for that.
Yes.
So non-repudiation is more this type of things you can see in movies and series when you sign the chain of custody for evidence, for instance.
Hmm.
This is because I have given you this, and we both have signed that. I have given you uh, this envelope, Daniel, and you sign it and say, I have received this envelope. So we can all see that, yeah, this envelope switched between Kim and Daniel at this time
Yep.
point in time.
Yep.
This is a tracking. An excellent technology that we will talk a bit more about for handling non-repudiation is called blockchain.
Yeah.
Blockchain is an excellent technology for non-repudiation. I would say blockchain is an excellent technology only for non-repudiation and should not be used in any other case, like the millions and millions of different crazy ideas I hear about blockchain. But
Mhm.
let's rant about blockchain in a coming episode.
Yes, let's do that for a separate time. But yeah, that's a different story. But I concur and I agree. What color blockchain is your favorite?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
the blue one.
but non-repudiation is an important thing as well, especially when it comes to contracts, when it comes to, yeah, important things that needs to sustain over time.
Hmm.
Non-repudiation becomes important, but especially in regulatory system instances, it's really important to know who told you what at what given time,
Yes.
to have records of that. Court systems have a lot of non-repudiation as well.
Hmm.
There's a reason why there's a court stenographer that actually is transcribing everything that is being said in a court.
Yes. Even today, with all the modern technology, still we rely on that.
So that's because you can always go back and tell what exactly did they say at that time, and then yeah, they can have it. So when you see the movies where they, for the dramatic effect, ask the stenographer to read back things that happened, well, this is actually true that they are there to do that.
Yes.
Although you don't usually use that for dramatic effect as much, but they are actually there to keep a permanent record on what has been said and done.
Right. And that falls back on the integrity part as well, right? So we have no tampering with the communication that has actually been has been done, has been said. Any transactions between companies, parties, we can actually validate the fact that things are in order as they were when we left. So
Yeah,
that's the whole point of it.
and it's important that I know you have actually received the message,
Yes.
so I know message received,
Yep.
because I can send you a message very securely, but if it's intercepted along the way,
Hmm.
we don't have a then we might not have a good way of knowing,
Mm.
do you actually have it. That's that's the tricky part. In for instance, the marathon guy who ran the first marathon,
Hmm.
yeah, he needed to alert his king about the pending invasion.
Yep.
uh, it could have been quite easy if had he been killed along the way,
Hmm.
to to prevent it, because the king did not expect him actually.
No.
So that's a part. But anyway, this is where non-repudiation comes into play.
Yes. All right. So to wrap this up, this was the first introduction to what information security is. This is the standard that we will talk about and refer to when we move along. The CIA of information security, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And we will continue on in the next episode, as I mentioned before, to talk about the human aspect of this. How do we actually implement information security processes and systems which are actually useful for people that are going to work with? And what is the effort, which you mentioned before, Kim? What is the actual stake you need to put in order to get these systems and processes to work? That we will cover in our next episode of the information security stack. This was our first episode. We are very thankful that you listened. If you want to reach out to us and want to comment on the episode, or if you have any questions, you can find us at citynetwork.eu/podcast. We will also link the transcript of the CIA model, as we mentioned in the episode, so you can read up on that as well. If you want to get involved into the discussion, let us know. We are more than willing to bring people on to have your expertise, your knowledge, your opinions in these matters and subjects as we move along. But for now, Kim, we thank everyone for listening and see you next time.
Hubba.